transpersonal leadership at an individual level or at an influence or behavioral level is going beyond yourself.
Yes.
At a corporate level, will it express itself going beyond profits and making profit just means towards it?
Well, it certainly should. Yes, absolutely.
And how do you translate that part? The second part. How does its influence, transpersonal leadership influence on business?
The leaders of the organisation, which may be everybody in the organisation, because in reality everybody's a leader to some extent, has to decide what is the core purpose and core values of the organisation. And as you know, Tata and some of the old Japanese companies and so on and so forth have had some of their values have been about being reasonable about profit, not maximising profit.
Yeah.
Being ethical as a high level purpose of the organisation. And so I think those things have to be set by a lot more companies, rather than we have to have integrity, which means nothing, because it's not. It's too indeterminate what that really means. We have to break that down to specifics, and then the organisation has to live by that. And in some ways, one way it may sound very soft, but actually it's very hard, because if you're going to live by that, then there has to be, everybody has to live by that. And if people in the organisation are willing to live by that, then they shouldn't be in the organisation. So there will be some very tough decisions, just as tough as decisions that people make in high performance management, where it goes all about KPIs and all the time.
So this is beyond the KPIs.
Absolutely.
Like something very voluntary, something that comes from within.
And again, I'm not against KPIs, but it's the order of things.
Finally, you're bringing this from a more Western point of view. It was developed with a lot of people around you. As the first sort of flying team. But now that you have made a good presence in India. In Indian context, and when I mean Indian context, it's not economic, socio-political and stuff like that, but more in terms of here, the spirituality quotient, the emotional quotient being where it is. How do you relate the idea of transpersonal leadership with the Indian side, or the more Oriental, Eastern side?
Yeah, that's a very it's an extremely good question. I'm not sure I actually have the full answer, to be quite honest. But what I will say is that the most important thing is that we're all human beings. Okay, so I would say that 80–85% of this is about us being human beings, and it's about how our brains are. Your brain is basically designed the same as my brain, and so on, and everybody around the world. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. So although the cultural differences, be they company or country or ethnicity or whatever, are different, we shouldn't put them out of proportion, and we sometimes do that, I think. The other thing that, though, talking specifically about India is, yes, my observation as a Westerner coming into India, having spent, I don't know how many times I've been, 15, 20 times over the last 30 years, so I don't, I'm by no means an expert on India, but I have some familiarity. And of course, I don't know whether my perception is the reality. I only know it's my reality. So what I say is from that perspective, and that is that I sense that the business leaders I speak to, in particular, are more comfortable talking about transpersonal stuff, talking about spiritual stuff, talking about the ethics of what they want to do with their organisation. I also see that they're very intellectual. So they're very intelligent people. They've got high IQs. They've got all those business skills. And I see that the top business people, the top HR directors, and so on and so forth in India, is as good as anywhere in the world. No question about that. Where my question mark is, where there might be the difference and maybe the weakness at this point in time, is in the emotional intelligence. Because if you think of the three levels of intelligence, of rational intelligence, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, you need all three for that transpersonal effect. And I think it's the behavioral connection, how people behave to each other at different levels in society, at different levels in the organisation, where there is perhaps more work to be done for India. And I'm not comparing with anywhere else, because every country has its unique. In the UK, for example, I'm not sure that their emotional intelligence is any better than it is in India. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that they're less conscious of the spiritual side in the UK than in India. So I would say that if stereotyping, where leaders should focus in India at this point in time is in the behavioural, because it will connect the intellectual and spiritual, and therefore enable the spiritual to become more part of the real world rather than something separate.
Does this weakness also have something to do with the fact that you have great intent but you cannot translate it into action effectively?
Exactly. That's exactly right, yes. Because you can only do that through relationships and through communication, and quite often I think the communication from one person to another at a different level, because there is a hierarchical aspect to the society, can be quite harsh rather than engaging and encouraging. And sometimes I, as a foreigner, get the feeling that it may not be intended and it may not be felt by the other Indian, but I get the feeling that people sometimes not speaking as if they're equal to each other as human beings. Whereas that, in the essence of a transpersonal organisation, that has to be true. Yes, people are at different levels and have different roles, but as a human being, we're all equal.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.